Okay.
Hi.
So welcome to the Make Better Medicine webinar. Make Better Medicine. You know, I love herbal constituents. I think I'm a chemistry nerd. I love all of this stuff. I think it's absolutely fascinating, right? But I realize it's not entirely relevant to every herbalist and everyone's practice. I mean, you know, all of us here have some interest in this because we're here. But you know, it isn't always the most practical thing until you get really deep into it, and then it becomes a lot more practical. So we were thinking, it's like, what do herbalists and practitioners, clinical herbalists, healthcare practitioners that use herbs, like, what do people want to know the most? You know, what do people want to know about? And one of the things we thought about was solubility and extraction with herbal constituents, because you know, we all learn, like, if you remember back to the first tincture you ever made, right? By the way, volume check, thumbs up if the volume is good. All right, cool. Remember back to the first tincture you ever made? You know, the first tincture I ever made, I think it was fresh plant, stuff it in a jar, 100 proof vodka, right? 100 proof vodka, fresh plant, stuff it in a jar until it's springy, cover it with the vodka, put the lid on, wait 6 weeks, you know? And that was my introduction to tincture making. And you make pretty good medicine that way with most plants, you know, because you're going the middle of the road with your ethanol percentage, right? Because 100 proof vodka is half water, half ethanol, right? 50-50. So, you know, you're hitting that middle range, like, so you're doing a pretty gosh darn good job with that plant, you know. But then as it goes along, you start noticing different things, like, you know, when it says, I'm looking for something that isn't actually here. But, you know, you start making things with different percentages of ethanol, right? Here's some propolis tincture that we made, 70%, you know, and you see this and you start looking this up in books and you're like, what is that actually about, right? Because in this book, there's a chart, right? Where's that chart? Do we ever remember which page it's on? Is it page 44?
Yeah.
It used to be.
Or 60.
Yeah, dude. This book is fatter now.
60.
Yeah, you see stuff like this, right? The chart is like, here's the herbs, here's the percentage, right? You're like, great, I'll do it with that percentage. But do you know why you're doing that? Right? And then that question starts expanding. Why am I doing it this way? Like, what's happening that I can't see, or what's happening underneath, like behind the curtain, like what's the hidden part? It gets kind of esoteric, honestly. Chemistry, alchemy, what's the difference again? But things like, why do we use the fluids that we use, right? Why do we do it? For, like, the first thing I learned with making a water infusion, like a tea in a mason jar, right, was, oh, if it's leaves, pour the boiling water, you know, put this much in the bottom, pour the boiling water, put the lid on and wait 4 hours. And then the question becomes, why that much? Why boiling? Why 4 hours? You know, so this is the stuff I would think about when I was medicine making. And I think, gosh, when did I learn this? 1986, I think, the first time I ever made a tincture. And so ever since then, I've been kind of like, what exactly am I doing? Would it be better if, you know, would I get like a stronger extraction? And part of what I want to say about a stronger extraction is it out of respect for the plants, right? One of my goals in medicine making is to not waste anything, right? Because if I can make an amazing, you know, tincture or oil or whatever with this much plant, why am I going to use this much plant and all the extra solvent, right? So it's part of respecting the gifts and the beings that are the plants, to learn how to make the best extraction or medicine that I can make out of them, right? That's part of it. And also, I just like, and I'm a perfectionist, I admit it in front of everyone, but it's really cool to try to really like get closer and closer and closer with what you want to present from that plant, right? And it's also, you know, if you sell products, it's also a lot more economical and more efficient, right? Which is cool too. So the idea being like, figure out what the most effective, efficient way is to get the goodies out of that plant that you are interested in, if indeed you know which goodies those are, right? And that's where the constituents part comes in. Because really what we're doing when we use different fluids, like here's the apple cider vinegar, for example. We should just drink this and like make faces.
All right.
No. Or that's really different than, ta-da, another herbalist favorite, olive oil, right? Or honey. Ooh, do you ever use honey as an extraction fluid? Look at this, so awesome.
Viscosity.
Oh my God, viscosity, it's thick. This is rowan berry honey that we made. When did we make this?
In
October 2019. This is pre-COVID. Whoa, rowan berry honey. So all these different fluids, you know, why are we using different fluids? What is it about those fluids that's like going and pulling certain groups or sets of constituents out of those herbs, right? So, you know, going back to when we first learned how to do stuff, pretty much what we do, we learn it from a teacher, we read it out of a book, we follow a recipe, right? A lot of herbal medicine making is recipe based. And that's, I mean, that's like totally the way to do it in the beginning, because you don't really know what you're doing, right? So you get a good recipe, you follow it, you make something nice. And then, or maybe you're one of those people who are like, oh yeah, I read the recipe, but I don't know where it is right now. So I'm just going to kind of, you know, do what I think I remember the recipe said. And like, sometimes that turns out awesome. And sometimes it turns out like, oh, wow, I better go find that recipe. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you come up with some stuff that gets all weird or reacts in itself, or, you know, just doesn't play with itself, you know, or tastes like unexpectedly powerful. So, you know, it's nice to have recipes, but, you know, you start thinking about them, right? And so the kind of stuff we're going to look at is, even if you don't know which constituents you want, because you haven't learned that much about herbal constituents yet, did you get that? You can kind of look at how it's been done traditionally, right? Because there are other people, even before they knew very much about herbal chemistry, right? Like I'm talking 1700s, 1800s, even like going way back, you know, before recorded history, but in Western, you know, botanical medicine history, we have written pharmacist formularies like from the 17 and the 1800s and pharmacopoeias and stuff. And they'll talk about, you know, who is this? That looks like licorice. It does. Oh, that's licorice. All right. You know, and in these old books, they'll be like, licorice, extract it with X% or dilute ethanol or do whatever. And they give the process for it. And you're like, how did they figure that out? You know, like back then they knew some organic chemistry, but very, very little compared to what we know today. So they weren't like, oh, you know, I want to get some glycyrrhizin out of there. Like I want to get these triterpene, one of these platinum. Like they didn't know this stuff that we know, but they knew it by efficacy, right? Because what happened back in the day was there would be botanical physicians and botanical pharmacists, right? And the pharmacists would be making extracts according to how they learned, and they would do series of experiments. The physiomedicalists and the eclectics in North America did a ton of this. So they would do a series of experiments. It's like, let's take this herb. I learned to do it 40%, 1 to 5 or whatever. And let's see what happens if we do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40%. So they would do like all these experiments, right? And then they would come up with a series of extracts, and then they would give them all to the physician, right? And they'd be like, here, try these and tell me which one works the best. Right? Because you could do that. Ooh, we've got glycyrrhizin tincture 1 to 5, 30%. Should I just, no.
We have pipettes if you
I'm just going to hit the glycyrrhizin right here in front of everyone. Oh man, that's good. That's the stuff we made last year
in the workshop.
Whoa, yeah. That is concentrated. Dang, I was surprised by that. That's a good one. But so this is what they would do. They would make this whole series, right? And they would give them to the doctors, and the doctors would be like, the 35%, that's the good stuff, and this went back and forth for generations, right? So this is the history of professional herbal medicine, so to speak, in North America. They did these experiments. They dialed in their extraction processes, right? And their fluids and whatever, and their time and their heat and the stuff we're going to talk about, until they found something that worked really well, right? Later is what came along, and we figured out which constituents they were pulling out of those herbs. They didn't know that. And so it's really cool because you can still get those old manuals in the form of PDFs on the internet. They just, go to different nerdy herbalist websites, they post them, So it was efficacy based, right? And now, we can look at a plant, an extract, see a whole bunch of different phytochemicals or constituents in there, and then we can understand which fluids will attract which constituents, right? And surprise, it's pretty much what they were doing like 200, 100, 200 years ago, because it was efficacy based. Ding, ding, right? So, a lot of what I do and what I learned was actually from looking at those old pharmacist manuals and those old pharmacopoeias, and how did William Cook do it, and like how did Lyle do it on the eclectics and everybody, and then putting it together with modern biochemistry, organic chemistry, phytochemistry stuff, right? So that's when you can really start understanding what's going on with solubility and extraction, is by bringing those two worlds together. Yeah, super fun. Let me ingest some solvent here.
It's just water.
Yes, water is a solvent. So a lot of what we're doing, like think about what we're doing when we're making herbal medicine. It's like, there's the plant, we have the dried, that's rose hips, isn't it? I love rose hips. Rose hips is my favorite. We poured into the keyboard, my favorite. Yeah. I can just see it now. I got a bunch of rose hips in my keyboard. Yeah. But what are we doing when we take something like this, right? Because a lot of times you can make really good medicine out of fresh plants. You can make really good medicine out of dried plants, and it depends on the plant and what you're trying to do, et cetera, right? But a lot of times we're using dried herbs, and you look at them and you're like, I just want to eat these. It'll probably make me cough. You look at them, like rose hips, like, oh, the rose hip, how close can we focus? Do you see the color of it? Ooh, or here's some of the same things. Look at this gorgeous apple. Isn't that a beauty? That's been in storage since October, early October. Yeah, dude, look at that thing. Right. So what is the color we're seeing there? Same in the rose hips. It has some of it and some other stuff. Is we're seeing constituents. Some constituents are colorful, right? So say we wanted to extract, the red stuff, the purpley red stuff from this apple, which is a really rich concentration of anthocyanins. That is a great word. Anthocyanins are a type of flavonoid, which is a type of polyphenol, right? And we happen to know that they're really good for our health. Like, we need these things in the diet. The red, purple, blue, the blueberries, the elderberries, the aronia berries, the elderberries. We have a bunch of toys here, right? The dark purple color. You even see it. I'm talking about anthocyanins. I always end up talking about anthocyanins. That's anthocyanins too in this brighter modern apple. Wow, look at that difference. Different concentration, maybe some different anthocyanins. But if I wanted to get those out of here, right, I would need to know something about which fluid they are most attracted to. Right? Would I, that would be interesting. Would I extract it with apple cider vinegar? Like if I peeled these and I wanted to extract the skins, right? Because I wanted to collect some anthocyanins, because I know they're really good for my cardiovascular system, and I wanted to add it to a cardiovascular formula, say. So I peeled a bunch of these gorgeous apples that came from genius gardener Karen Me, who was down in Durango, and I extracted them with ACV, apple cider vinegar. What am I doing? It would turn pink, I'll bet you anything. It would be so bright. because anthocyanins change color with different pH, right? Or what if I wanted to make a tincture of them? Like I just want to make a tincture of them because I'm going to add it to these other tinctures in a formula, right? So I guess, ooh, look at this, some fancy ethanol. Ooh. That's what happens when you hang out with lab nerd herbalists. You know, what if I wanted to tincture it? What percentage of ethanol would I use? Could I just do it with water? Could I make tea? Could I make a decoction out of these apple skins? What would I get? You know, I could extract them with some bippity. That's for the really special medicine.
Yeah, or boppity.
Or boppity. We could do that, right? But so choosing these different fluids, what is it? This is the thing behind the curtain. I'm going to do a screen share and show you pictures about how are we doing for time?
It is 6:23.
Cool. Really?
Mhm.
Dang, dude. Time flies. I'm going to do the whole screen. Put you down in infinite tunnel. Can you all see that? Thumbs up
Yes.
if you can see the cool thing. Okay. So what are we doing? Why is there a yin yang symbol there? All right. So I am talking right now about matching your extraction fluid, which in herbalism we call menstruum, right? Menstruum is single. Isn't that great? Menstruum. And menstrua is plural. Yeah, type the word in the chat just in case somebody out there isn't familiar with it.
All right.
So that is herbalist speak. I love our language set. That is herbalist speak for solvent or solvent system, right? So a lot of times when we hear the word solvent, we think, ooh, nasty chemical solvent residue, bad thing, right? But a solvent is like a fluid that you use to extract something with, right? So we can talk about water. That's why I said I was going to drink a solvent. We can talk about water as a solvent. We can talk about ethanol, alcohol, the kind of alcohol we use as a solvent, right? We can talk about, okay, what if we're making a tincture? 50%. What is that? 50% water, 50% ethanol. That's a solvent system because there's more than one solvent in it, right? So solvent system is the word we're going to use for menstruum or menstrua from now on for the next 7 minutes. So what is behind that matching the solvent to the herb, number one, and even more targeted to the set of constituents in that herb that you would like to pull out and preserve and represent in your medicine, right? What is it? Mainly it's what we're looking at here. And I know some of y'all have heard about this because some of y'all went to CSCH and like I teach classes in this, an advanced program. And so polarity, this is the big one. It's not the only influence on solubility. By the way, defining solubility, I'll skip back to this, but I should have said this first. Solubility is like, it's interesting, like if you talk to an herbalist about solubility, they will say something like, oh, that's alcohol soluble, or that's water soluble, right? Or that's oil soluble or whatever. That's like the first level of looking at it. If you talk to a chemist about solubility, they'll talk about a constituent, right? And they'll be like, how soluble is it in, and then fill in the blank for your solvent. So it's not, is it alcohol soluble? It's how soluble is it in 95% ethanol or whatever percent ethanol you're thinking about? How soluble is it? Like, is it just is it soluble at all? Is it like grudgingly soluble? That's a new category I just made up. That's really good. Is it grudgingly soluble? Like a little bit of it will come out, but it doesn't really, it's not that interested in your solvent. Or is it, they call it sparingly soluble, like a little bit of, some will come out or, so it's actually a continuum. Is it like very soluble? Is it like completely soluble? Where is it on that line of solubility? Where is the solubility of your constituent on that continuum in that solvent, right? So it's not, is it soluble? It's how soluble is it? Right. And there will be some degree, and they'll actually give something like in chemistry world, they'll be like, oh, you can get, 23 milligrams of this constituent. Milligrams are tiny, right? I'm just making numbers up for, a hypothetical here. You can get 23 milligrams of constituent X in water at 25 degrees centigrade, right? So they tell you how much is going to come out, right? And so the fun thing about that is it starts showing you that solubility is not either or, it's somewhere on a continuum, it's somewhere in a range, right? Which comes us right back around, I'll get to this in a second, brings us right back around to the beginning thing where the first way you learned to make a tincture, first way I learned was 100 proof vodka, right? Because we're hitting a middle range. It's half water, it's half alcohol, right? And so, there's a range of what 100 proof vodka will get. It'll get a little bit of this and some of that and a whole bunch of this. And wow, a lot of that really likes 50-50 and a little bit of this and some of that, maybe a little bit of that really likes 95%, right? So you can see it's like a range, a continuum, not either or, but where does it fall on that? I just see it as a kind of a rainbow line for some reason, like where is the constituent on that curve? So what's behind that phenomenon is polarity plus other factors that we're going to learn about, right? So here it says polarity is the main principle that influences solubility. What is polarity? Polarity of the constituents that you're pulling out of the herbs, right? And polarity of the solvent or the menstruum or the solvent system, right? So we're matching constituents to solvent, and it's based on polarity. We want their polarities to harmonize. Okay, so let's look at that just a little further.
Water, highly polar molecule.
We've got these cute plastic molecules here. Look at these things. Ding, ding. What are molecules? They're made of atoms sharing electrons with each other. The water molecule. Excuse me, let me just have some more water. So matching the polarity, the key thing of getting the constituents, what you want out of the herb, is matching the polarity of the desired constituents to the polarity of your solvent/solvent system. That's the key thing, right? Okay, polarity. There's a bunch of words about it. I can say the words. I want to see where I'm landing here. By the way, this is the PowerPoint that goes with the class if you're interested in the class. So for example, polarity is a range, a continuum too. Every set of molecules, like a solvent, like what is a thing of water, right? What is a thing of water? There's water. Isn't it beautiful? Water is life. Thank you, water. What are we looking at? We're looking at many water molecules, right? Just I don't know, like there are many. It is a large number, right? But we can look at this whole collection of water and think of it as a solvent. I'm always tempted to drink out of the beaker, like you're never supposed to do, like, right? Like lab rule number 1, do not drink out of the beakers. But so it's molecules, so many of them, right? Here's a model of a water molecule. Okay, a little 3D plastic groovy. And then here is an illustration of water molecule, right? So water, everybody knows water is H2O. I know it's almost questions time. Everybody knows water is H2O, right? So that means there's a hydrogen atom, whee, and there's a hydrogen atom, whee, and there's an oxygen atom, right? And it has this awesome shape, like 104.5 degrees, right? Bond angle in water. But the nature of oxygen, right, is that it attracts electrons unto itself when it's in a bond, when it's like having a relationship with other atoms in a molecule. Oxygen is like, it has an electron hunger is what I call it, right? And in chemistry, they call that electronegativity. It wants, like, the electrons are like oxygen, and they hang out with the oxygen. Since electrons are negative charge, right? That gives the oxygen, as you can see in this drawing here, it gives the oxygen a bit of a negative charge because a bunch of electrons are hanging out with it, right? And when electrons go to the oxygen, they leave the hydrogens, right? And so they don't have enough electrons, so they take on a bit of a positive charge, right? That's called charge separation. And that is basis of polarity.
Okay.
We say polarity, we're saying that molecule is polarized, right? It has a charge separation. It has a partially negative area and it has a partially positive area. And water is the queen of that. Water is highly polar. So here comes the big one. Why do we care? Because like attracts like in solubility and polarity. So a highly polar solvent will attract highly polar molecules. Ding. So what we're doing is we're learning the polarity of the solvent, we're learning the polarity of the constituents we want, and then we're designing our solvent or our solvent system. We're designing it so that the polarity of it will match the polarity of the constituents we're after. Right? That's the secret behind using different solvents. So when we have something like water is highly polar, right? Actually, I know I need to stop class and start taking questions. It's so hard to stop class. I want to finish explaining about polarity. Alcohol, ethanol is moderately polar, right? Where does the alcohol go?
Oh,
It looks a lot like water. We have to remember which one we put the ethanol in. We put it in the littlest.
The
one.
littlest one.
Yeah. You should never do this at home without labeling things. Ethanol everywhere. Good thing that stuff evaporates quickly.
Yeah.
You sure that's not methanol?
Oh, I'm sure.
Right? This has a different, it's made of different molecules, right? It's made of ethanol molecules. This is our alcohol that we use. Oh, look, a model. Doesn't that look like a funny little poodle or something? Right? Model of ethanol, 2 carbons, bunch of hydrogens, and there's that oxygen. Yep. So there's a little bit of charge separation going on in the ethanol, right? So if you look at the molecule, you're like, oh, oxygen, we got some partial negative happening, we got some partial positive over here, right? So it's moderately polar. It's not as polar as water due to other factors that we could get into later, but it's about 65% as polar as water. Oh, so that solvent, if we just use straight up ethanol, right, is going to be interested in a different but overlapping set of constituents in the plant, right? Because its polarity is that much lower than water. Interesting. So if we extract the same material like these rose hips with water versus with ethanol, we're going to get a different range of constituents out. Right? With the ethanol, we'll get some lower polarity constituents. With the water, we'll get some higher polarity constituents. And you can take it down. I promise this is the last thing. You tell I could talk about this stuff all night. What about if I was going to extract those rose hips? That would be weird, but anything with okay, we got a question. Hold on. With olive oil, the polarity of olive oil is actually super, super low, super low, super low, super low. It's made of triglycerides. Right? And compared to water, the polarity, if you put olive oil and water in together, they're not even going to mix, right? They're like, I don't know what you are. I'm not attracted to you at all. Right? Yeah, what do we have?
The question is, what do you think of vegetable glycerin as a solvent?
Vegetable glycerin. Vegetable glycerin is 81% as polar as water, right? So it selects for a certain set of constituents that water is also interested in, and maybe a little bit of constituents. Yeah.
Here's another good question. Is ethanol and ethyl alcohol the same thing?
I believe it is, isn't it? Ethanol, ethyl alcohol. Says so right here. Yeah, according to this bottle, yes. Right. So where was I going? So the olive oil. So that's what it's about, is attracting different sets of constituents to match the polarity of your solvents. Okay. That's the big picture one. And there are a lot of other influences, and that's what this upcoming class is about. We go through them all in detail and talk about how they influence your medicine making. So It's question time.
Ooh, if a solvent is 195 proof, isn't that 97%?
Oh, well, 195 divided by 2 is what? So that's how you figure that out. Is it 97.5? 197. What's 195 divided by 2? Math on the fly here. Because proof is double the alcohol percent.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so
7.5.
so is there anyone out there that would actually like to unmute themselves?
Yeah, I would. I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you are. Talk a little bit louder.
Okay, this is Ellen Kamai. So nice to join you in this class today. We have found through a lot of testing that I was doing in the 70s, that's why when we were considering doing glycerites using the glycerin as an extractant, we found that it did get a lower percentage than alcohol, but we wanted to offer alcohol-free.
Right.
So we first used alcohol, and then we found a way to take the alcohol off and then use the glycerin as a preservative. And that was a really good way to get a higher percentage of actives.
Yeah, and that makes you are so right. Taking it further, which actives are you interested in?
Right, for different plants.
Which plant, right? Because even like there are some constituents in some plants that if you extract them, you know, in a certain way, really jump out into glycerol or glycerin. Glycerol and glycerin are the same thing, right? It's just two different names for it. So there are some actives, right? Actives being like the name, another way to talk about, I want these constituents in my product, right? Some of them will jump right out, but some of them, because their polarity matches the polarity of the glycerin, right? Which is, you know, just 81% as polar as water. So, you know, some of them love that, but other ones, they're like, they really want some ethanol to pull them out of that plant, and maybe even higher percentage of ethanol. And so this is a perfect example with cannabinoids from cannabis, right? In the very beginning, when people are like, how do we make products out of this? You know, a lot of people tried to extract cannabis with glycerin, right? And because it tastes good, because cannabis tincture is, let us say, a very challenging flavor. You know, if anybody's ever tasted that. But so they would be like, oh, well, this glycerin tincture, and they started calling it tincture, tastes great. And I'm like, yeah, because it's glycerin. But like, what concentration of cannabinoids are you pulling out of that plant? Because the polarity doesn't match, because glycerin is hot, you know, very polar, and cannabinoids have very low polarity, right? And so, you know, that's why it's popular to extract them with CO2, say, as an extraction solvent, right? You've heard of CO2 extraction or supercritical CO2. You can actually like compress and cool carbon dioxide gas to make a special kind of fluid that's a really good extraction fluid for low polarity constituents, like curcuminoids from turmeric, like, you know, some of the polyphenols from rosemary, like cannabinoids from cannabis, you know. Yeah, another question?
Okay, so we've got a question that says, would like to know the effect of steeping herb for more than 4 to 6 weeks, like 6 months or a year.
What are you steeping it in is the first question to be able to answer that. Are we talking about you're making a tincture? You can.
We'll get more information from that. The next one is, with double extraction of a polysaccharide rich herb, is it true that if you do the alcohol extraction first, you denature the polysaccharide? And is denaturing it the same as destroying it? Should you do the water devotion first?
So there are different opinions on that. Okay, so what we're talking about maybe is, are you doing like reishi mushroom or some kind of medicinal mushroom? So double extraction, I'm assuming with double extraction, you mean you're extracting the same plant material with 2 different solvents, right? So this is, if you want to like unmute yourself and talk, it would be easier, because some of these questions, in order to answer them, actually, I need to.
Hey, yeah,
yeah.
I'm unmuted.
Who am I talking to? Where are you?
Hi, my name is Colleen.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so what are we
Can you hear
talking
me okay?
about? Double extraction?
Yeah, mushrooms specifically.
Okay, and why do we need to
Lion's
extract
mane,
mushrooms?
because they have both alcohol soluble constituents and water soluble constituents.
Right. So in a lot of our medicinal mushrooms, and in fact, plants like echinacea and eleuthero and a lot of other plants, there's a set of constituents called immunomodulating polysaccharides, right? And they're very desirable. So they love water. They're high polarity constituents because they're polysaccharides. They're made of a bunch of little sugar units stuck together, right? Bonded together, and sugar loves water. Everybody knows that. You put it in there and there it goes. So immunomodulating polysaccharides are the more water soluble constituents. Remember, we're talking about a continuum, right? So they're most soluble in water. And then with some of our medicinal mushrooms, we have another set of constituents. Classically, I'll use as an example, reishi mushroom, Ganoderma, right? I always look over there because I used to have a beautiful reishi over there. I'm like, where are you? And the shiny stuff on the outside of reishi, right? That doesn't like water very much. That's low polarity. It's called reishi varnish, right? Is the nickname for it. And mostly it's composed of a set of constituents called triterpenes, right? Triterpenes are really low polarity. There's sort of a lot of our resins contain high concentration of triterpenes. So they're resinous, right? Resin is a catch-all term, but they're resinous. They're low polarity, they're shiny, you know. And if you just extract your reishi mushrooms with, you know, you make an infusion in a jar or whatever, you're not going to get very much triterpenes, right? Because they're not interested in high polarity solvent like water.
Mm-hmm.
So hence the double extraction. This is one way to try to get both of those sets of constituents out of that material, right? Double extraction. So do you do that ethanol first? And do you do the water first, right? And you know, there's people that do either one, but I think I prefer the ethanol first. Actually, you know what I do? I don't even double extract them. It's too much work. I just take the powder, then I get all the constituents. But if you like,
I was
doing
thinking if I just used fresh, yeah.
No, really, I take I do. I'm just like down the hatch.
Oh, I have another question.
Okay, hold on to it because I want to finish this
You
one
got
because
it.
I haven't finished it yet. Okay, so the double extraction, right? So does the alcohol denature the polysaccharides? That is not a thing on my radar. I know alcohol definitely denatures proteins and peptides. Whether it denatures polysaccharides, I don't actually know. I've never heard that before. So I can't say yes or no, but I've never heard it before, which is worth something. But what does denature actually mean? Does it mean ruin? No, it means if you're a protein, right, and you denature, it means you lose your specialized 3D shape. You kind of come apart into the strings that you were made of, and then you can't do your function anymore, right? So if you need the protein to function, you put it in alcohol, that's not happening, right? But, you know, polysaccharides, I don't know how they, you know, I don't know how much they would be affected. That's a really good question, actually, when you mix that back together, right? I mean,
yeah, do you bring it, do you like, once you add the water phase in, do you renature
you
the
can't
polysaccharide?
renature.
Okay.
That's not
not a word.
Happens. If polysaccharides kind of lose some of their shape, I don't know if it's that significant for their function, because what I do know is it's the sequence of sugars in an immunomodulating polysaccharide that communicate with like receptor systems in our immune system when we drink it, when we ingest it, and it touches the lymphatic tissue, right? There are signals given to the immune system, and it activates the immune system to respond, so immunostimulant. And I know that that's dependent on the sequence of sugars. So I am guessing, I'm like educated guessing that the alcohol does not denature the polysaccharides to any functionally significant degree. That would be my working hypothesis. That's actually a really good one.
Amazing.
I've never thought about that before.
So
that's why I like to have live questions. It makes me think. Yeah, but people do that. But like, okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, other questions. I know. But also look back at traditional. How did they do it traditionally? How did they do it traditionally? Right? This is actually a good illustration. They decocted the mushrooms for a long time in hot
They
water.
ate mushrooms.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they ate them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So think about that in the context of traditional practice too. That's what, yeah. What else? What else have we got?
The next question
Thanks,
is it
Lisa.
possible to create
Hold on.
at home a liposomal formulation, hydrophilic core lipid exterior?
Ooh, I've wondered about that too, actually. Wow, we're getting like sophisticated questions here. This is cool. You know what? I thought about that. I was like, what if I take the Vitamix? That's my like, I don't have a lab blender right now, so that's my high-speed blender. What if I took some like lecithin, like some sunflower lecithin, say liquid sunflower lecithin, which is an emulsifier, right? Which is like, you know, liposomal it involves the same sorts of molecules that are in lecithin, which are, gosh, how could I forget them? The cell membrane things. I'm having a word moment. Phospholipids, thank you, right? Lecithin is mostly phospholipids, which are little molecules that have a water-loving end and an oil-loving end. And if you can wrap a ball of those molecules around a constituent, right? Then that's basically what a liposome is. It's a constituent wrapped in a ball of other molecules that make it easier for you to absorb. So I was like, what if you put some lecithin in with whatever extract, you know, and whirled it, and maybe some glycerin, just kind of make up some solvent system there, and whirled it in a Vitamix for a long time. Would you make like a homemade liposomal thing, right? Because I mean, it is a bit of a sophisticated process to make those ones that you buy in bottles. So I actually tried that with a formula where I was putting CBD in with some other herbal extracts, and I put the lecithin in, and it was really interesting. I like how it turned out, except it tasted kind of gross. Because lecithin is not the tastiest substance, you know, or that kind of lecithin wasn't. I don't know, maybe there's some lecithin that tastes better, but this was just like really dark colored sunflower lecithin, and it gave it this kind of, and it was really important in this product for it to taste good. You know, it was part of the design of it. So yeah, that would be fun to try. You can make, at the very least, you can make an awesome mess in your Vitamix. Take a video and post it. What else have we got?
We've got, can you also speak to how to enhance formulas for enhancing skin permeation? With which oils, essential oils?
Oh, so general principle there being like the skin loves oily stuff, right? Yeah. I always say you see people put lotion on and stuff, and you're like, oh, or sunscreen, and you're like, where did it go? And they're like, away? He's like, no, it went in. Anything that we put on our skin is going right in there into the bloodstream with a subcutaneous fat. And if you wouldn't eat it, the principle is, right? Maybe you don't want to put that on your skin. So yeah, skin loves to suck up oily stuff, right? And essential oils definitely are penetration enhancers, right? This is, and there are a lot of papers published on this actually with different essential oil constituents and different essential oils, and what degree do they suck and drag other like oily things to your skin that are maybe a little bigger or kind of reluctant because of their polarity to actually enter through the skin. Essential oils will pull things into your skin, and they take advantage of this in like delivery of certain pharmaceuticals, like transdermal delivery. Like they'll put some limonene is one of them. It's a really common essential oil constituent that comes out of like citrus rinds, right? And they'll put some of that, or I think they might even do it with, don't quote me on this, but I think linalool, which from lavender, has also been used for that. So they try to use ones that, you know, have low toxicity and like good penetration, and they'll put it in with a pharmaceutical molecule, a drug molecule, and then that will pull that into the system. The essential oil molecule will pull it into the system. So there's various, you know, medications that are made that take advantage of this very principle, right? But for the details of about how to do that, you need to talk to an aromatherapist, right? Somebody who's really trained in aromatherapy, like Kat Delaney teaches aromatherapy and essential oil safety and formulation, body care product formulation at CSCH, right? So they study things about individual oils and which ones are better for enhancing the penetration of certain things. But yeah, it is definitely a phenomenon. It can increase, coming in of other constituents considerably. And it's really interesting to think about that too, when you're making your body care formulations, because you're like, you got to think about, oh, if I'm putting any kind of essential oil thing in here, which by the way, right, 2% max, 1%, usually better. A lot of people put too much essential oil in their formulations, but think about how much of the other constituents are going to be like pulled in through the skin by those, because it's definitely a thing. I've seen numbers like the average increase is around 20% when you mix something with essential oils. About 20% more of the constituents are sucked in through the skin.
This is Jeff.
Yes.
I asked the question. If I'm worried about using the essential oils because of the cytotoxicity, would it be better to use like a long chain fat, because that also improves permeation, but at the same time it doesn't have as much of toxic effect?
It depends on the essential oil. Like some oils you don't want to put on your skin. Some oils, where you really get the information about which oils it's okay to put on your skin. I'm looking for the book, but I don't see it here. It's probably the computer is probably sitting on it or something. There is a great book about this. It's Tisserand's, what's it called? Essential Oil Safety.
I think so.
Yeah, it's a big, heavy, gorgeous, expensive book. And it goes in great detail in that because, the potential toxicity of any constituent in any essential oil, right? They've looked at that. They've looked at the constituents in detail, right? It's awesome. And they've looked at the essential oil in detail, and it's awesome. And they've ranked them specifically according to like, this is totally fine to put on your skin in this amount under these circumstances, no. So it really is individual to the molecules in the essential oil and to the oil itself, right? But if you don't want to use an essential oil for whatever reason, say you're making an unscented product, that's what you just said, because, one of the best things I've actually found for penetrating the skin, this is going to sound wacky, but it's lard, lard or tallow, right? And so we live in the North Fork Valley, right? Paonia, Colorado. A lot of people do regenerative biodynamic ranching here, and they make amazing things from their animals. So we have lard and we have tallow that's like super high quality. And last year I got some of this from somebody and I put it on and I'm like, are you kidding me? This is what a plant, like I've never experienced it because it's not a plant oil, because this is like animal skin, right? And it matches so much better than a plant oil is. So that's what you're talking about the longer chain fatty acids, but it's variable, right? Yeah, what those things contain. But the point I'm making is a lot of people like their vegan skincare products. But if you're into paleo or keto or whatever, if you're a meat eater, try some high quality lard or tallow. It'll blow your mind. Yeah. What else?
I've got, could cannabinoids be extracted with vegetable glycerin?
Okay. So hypothetically, if you're on planet Q and all you have is glycerin and you want to get some cannabinoids out of a plant, this is actually a really good leading question. How are we doing for time?
We are at 6:56.
Okay.
And we're not going to get to all the questions.
I know.
Like,
let's just not
20.
stop. Let's just go until like the last person drops.
We could, but we also have to upload this.
Okay, never mind. So if all you had was glycerin and you wanted to get some cannabinoids out of a plant, the plant that contains them, how would you make maximum use of that glycerin, right? Because cannabinoids aren't that interested in glycerin. Cannabinoids, low polarity. Glycerin, very polar, right? They just don't match. So how would you do it? you would use these other influences on extraction, right? You would use heat. You would use agitation. In other words, a lot of stirring.
Pressure.
You could use pressure to increase the extraction, right? What else? Heat, agitation, time. You would use time, right? So if you could apply more ways to like kind of knead that plant material molecularly, like and pull those cannabinoids out of it, you could use surface area, right? You could powder them first. That would be fun, straining it out after. Have you ever strained a powder out of glycerin?
No, not yet.
That sounds hard. It's like straining powder of honey. You know, so there are other things that you can apply. So it's not just polarity. That's the secret. That's why we're teaching a whole class on this, because there are like multiple threads that you pull together to like enhance the extraction of something, right? Because again, solubility is a continuum, polarity is a continuum. There's always a range. So, and it's never either or. So some people will come up and they'll be like, low polarity constituents, resinous constituents, cannabinoids, triterpenes, whatever you're talking about, are not water soluble. You've probably seen that, right? Right? I say they have low solubility in water because of the polarity doesn't match, but bring these other influences into play and you can increase the amount of them that you will get out into that water or that glycerin in the case of the example we're talking about. Let's take one more question.
Okay, does your book contain information about extracting fresh herbs?
Oh, not very much. So extracting fresh herbs is really interesting. I am still rolling this around in my head. So this is quickly what I learned about extracting fresh herbs. Fresh herbs contain water. Surprisingly, the water content of fresh herbs was a lot higher than I thought before I really got into it and started learning about it in detail. Right, so you just have some fresh leaf. Obviously, this is not a fresh leaf, but if it were, you know, the average water content of a fresh leaf is about 75%. Like, whoa. And there's some herbs that we like to do up fresh, you know. I even do like fresh comfrey leaf in olive oil. Yes, there's a way. Yes, there's definitely a way. Yeah, but what about getting the water out? There's a way. But so some leaves are really juicy. I mean, like comfrey leaves are really juicy. So like purslane leaves are super juicy. Aloe leaves, right? Really juicy. So some leaves have even much higher than 75% water content. They might go down to 70. It depends. It's a living being, so every you know parameter varies. But there's going to be water in there, right? So one way of going about it is to calculate how much water is in your plant material, and then realize that that water will be added into your solvent system as the plant extracts, right? So like you weigh the fresh sample, you dry some, you see that it weighs less, then you subtract this from what you started with, and that tells you how much water was in it, and you figure out the percent. And there's like a series of mathings that you do with this. That's what we're actually, this is involved, right? So that's actually what we're going to do in the workshop in June. We're going to do that. Yeah, we're going to go through those mappings. Yeah, because it's a process and it's not intuitive either. Like it took me a while to understand it. I'm like, why are we putting this number over here and over there? But basically you calculate the amount of water in your fresh plant and then you add that to your menstruum as you design your menstruum using the powers of math, and it comes out correct, right? It comes out, say like you wanted to make a 70% with this fresh plant or a 50% or 35% with this fresh plant, right? You can actually calculate it with this set of like, it's pretty simple equations actually if you're into math. And if you're not into math, you're like, let's let's have a worksheet, which we do, you know. But yeah, you can figure the plant water into the menstruum, and then you can add the right amount of water to your menstruum, you know, so the added water plus the plant water adds up to how much water you wanted. Am I answering the question, or am I just like
Yeah, I
getting
believe you
excited
did.
about fresh plant extraction?
I believe you
Yeah.
did. Also, it is
Okay.
7 p.m.
It is 7 p.m. No.
We could let them know about the code.
It's
Mm.
over already.
Yeah.
See, I just love this stuff. I could have so much fun doing it. So what are we letting them know about? Oh, there's a discount code for the class. For those of y'all who showed up, 160 of you. Hello, everybody. And so, yeah, you can put it in the chat.
Yep.
So you probably already got this in an email, or you will as soon as the class is over. So watch your email for it, but we're going to give it to you here just in case something goes awry. So there it is in your chat, and you got the code. So that's good. And it's all capital letters, make better medicine. This is the goal, make better medicine, because we already make good medicine, right? So we're going to make better medicine, and experiments are fun. And what else do we need to tell people before the end? Watch your emails for, you are so welcome, Tracy. So, oh, now I'm seeing tannins are large polyphenol molecule. Zoom. Somebody said something about tannins. So this class that's coming up really goes into all the stuff we just mentioned and introduced. So it's about what's behind the curtain. It's about what do we think about if we want to improve our methods. It's like how to make our recipes better, how to dial it in, right? And it's the first in a series. So in future classes, we're going to look at different other aspects of medicine making. One of them will be that fresh tincture thing, how to do the calculations, you know. So what you all are interested in, keep sending questions into the chat. Like, what would you like to see in future classes? Like, ooh, that's cool, class in the series about whatever you've always wondered about, or you know, unanswered questions in medicine making, or class topics for future webinars and future classes. Okay, so what did I forget? We have this list. What did I forget to talk about? Did we? Okay, so you got your code if you're interested in the class. Hopefully you learned some fun stuff. Hopefully you're more excited about medicine making now than before. Gosh, I am just talking about it. Somebody asked, where is Boop? Where is Boop? Oh, I don't know, but I think Boop is like related to Bop. Was Boop the
Bippity boppity boop.
Yeah, we're missing. Boop is in the class videos, actually. Boop makes an appearance. Totally. Okay, well, thank you for
Alright.
showing up. I can't believe how time flies when we do this.
Yeah.
I say this
lot of
every single
questions,
class
yeah.
I teach. I'm like, how did I get to be this time? Oh, I know what I wanted to tell you all about. There's also some of you out there, I think, have taken it. I have a whole like 2-semester class about herbal constituents and solubility and extract. I see a head bobbing over there. They're like, yeah, I took that class. It was awesome. Right. That, you know, if you really want to study this stuff, it's not available right now because we're switching platforms on it. But in a few months, I will definitely let you all know about it. And yeah, it's a whole like deep dive. You took it too. Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, I have so much fun with that because it literally we could talk about everything for weeks, you know, so really get into it. And then again, we're having that workshop in June where you can actually come out and do this stuff with us in our almost finished herbal laboratory.
Yay.
It's like a construction zone right now, but it's really close. So yeah, that's up on our website, herbal, and that's elderberriesfarm.com. It has a whole thing about that up there. So if you want to come and play with us in person. Woo. Okay, are we finished?
I think so.
Oh, I hate to do this. I hate to say goodbye, but yay. Good to see everybody. Thanks for showing up. I see all your faces. Goodbye,
Yay.
beautiful herbalists.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Watching everyone
Thank you.
disappear. You're welcome.
Always fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Aw.
Oh my God, before you hit end, will you tell me the polarity of raw honey?
Oh my God. Honey, it's
Just
like
tell
some
me
kind of,
Is it
yeah,
like glycerin?
close.
It's
But
close.
it's
That's all I
acidic.
need to know.
Okay, close. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
3 hours later, I'm like, but what about?
I know.
I gotta go. I gotta do
Bye.
something else. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Lisa. See you.